Here. Mr. Lever and Mr. Musto are absent today.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the following means. Annual notice was sent to the Herald News, the Record, the South Bergenite, the Observer, Township Clerk, and posted in the lobby of the Town Hall and Board Office, setting forthcoming scheduled work meetings and public meeting of the Board. Okay. Right now, we're going to have a presentation concerning, it's always a nice thing, certifications, the certificates, etc.
Great, so this is the good stuff we get to start off with. We really want to make sure that we take time to recognize the people in the community that do so much, not only for our schools, but for the community as a whole. One thing that we really are looking to foster this year is a renewal, not only of school spirit, but of community spirit as well. And in doing that, we have many people to recognize who help us accomplish that. And the first person that we would really like to recognize is someone who really took charge and demonstrated great leadership qualities in facilitating the collection of backpacks and school supplies for multiple students in need, and really helping us to be able to provide those. So on behalf of the Lyndhurst Board of Education, we would like to ask Sergeant Richard Pizzuti to please come on up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
It was the entire department donated the backpacks, and I simply facilitated it through Jill Tosman. So it was a department effort.
yeah, we thank Jill as well, and thank you for all your support. The next group of advisors as well as students that we want to recognize is a group that came into being last year. And actually the summer of 2014, Ms. Muley and I had lots of conversation because we were given an opportunity to work through Rutgers University. And because of the devastation that multiple members, multiple families of our community suffered through with regard to Sandy, we were recognized as being in need of some supportive services, and the support really far exceeded our expectations. And when Ms. Muley is in charge of something, it always exceeds the administrator's expectations. And when Ms. Muley starts rallying students together, you always get 4 or 5 times the amount of students that we would expect. And certainly this was a great undertaking. So what this group did throughout the year was to get together with their advisors and work on ways to support the school, support the community. And that really culminated in May when they took on a really large project. And that was to really raise awareness of mental health issues, not only in the community but statewide. And their initiative was so great that it received recognition from the Office of the Governor, Chris Christie himself, that recognized them. And they had their first annual Chalk Out Stigma event last May. And the Governor's Council on Mental Health Stigma aims to combat the discrimination or shame that can prevent people with mental health disorders from seeking assistance. So truthfully, this was an advocacy in order to support an understanding of mental health awareness and support the work of those people to seek help and to help them get that support. So So at this time, I would like to recognize the multiple advisors that make this SOS group possible. And we'll start with the organizer of it herself, Mary Ann Millett. Mr. Rowland. Mr. Afito. Mr. Thierry. Mr. Kropa. Ms. Hoyt. Ms. Renzia.
She's too big right now.
How about a round of applause? And we have a huge staff for all of those who are here, as well as those who could not be here due to other engagements. So what I'd like to just ask all the SOS members to do is to please come on up and present yourselves as a large group. Come on up.
I'm Karen Halpern, and I'm a senior.
I'm Jacqueline Coliello, and I'm a senior.
I'm Tiffany Becky, and I'm a junior.
I'm Sarah Madonna, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Matt Dowd, and I'm a sophomore. I'm Ryan Storer, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Steph Santo, and I'm a junior.
I'm Francesca DePisa, and I'm a junior.
I'm Kayla Pareto, I'm a junior.
I'm Kelly Weinstein, I'm a sophomore.
Let's hear it for these guys.
Public hearing, meeting agenda, lane.
Number 6, could you please explain to me the bully policy and what your procedures will face to the bully?
So we have a really clearly defined framework for our HIPA adherence to the anti-bullying bill of rights law. And actually, what we did to make it a little more user-friendly and available for parents as well as community members is we have that actually right on our website. It's an entire handbook. And if you look at the handbook, it doesn't only explain it, but it explains it in very common terminology, which we found to be very helpful also to students to better understand the differences between bullying and conflict. And as soon as something arises that falls potentially within the parameters of harassment, intimidation, or bullying, we take immediate procedures, all of which are within the confines of the law. And that includes a report immediately on the day to the principal of the building, an investigation that is prompted immediately. All of this is followed up with clear documentation. Again, you'll find all of that in the handbook. And then we continued with the investigation to make sure that we meet the timeframes of the state law to make a determination as to whether or not it does in fact fall within the parameters of the HIV.
And what if the district fails to act without legal consequences?
Well, let's finish up the rest of the procedure so you understand when we speak about districts, it can be very wide in scope. Once it is determined by the anti-bullying coordinator to either fall within or outside the parameters of HIV, that's then presented to the Board of Education. Every case is reviewed with the Board of Education so that they can know exactly what's going on, and a letter is then sent home to the parents explaining if the children were involved, whether or not it fell into the parameters of the HIV. Now, if there's a situation in which a incident is occurring and it's not being fairly investigated, then of course the parent is urged to notify the principal or the counselor so that we can certainly look into that more closely, and that we would take very seriously.
And these two people, do you have one per school, or just these two are over all the
No,
schools?
so that's a great question. Now, the number 6, if you remember back in August, we had a list of all our anti-bullying specialists. We had one at every school, as well as a support person at every school. The only difference was that once the school year got underway, we wound up repositioning 2 of the counselors. These were 2 of them, and that's why they're the only ones listed here. This is really just an amendment to what was listed in August.
And are they giving any kind of training on bullying, anti-bullying?
Absolutely, absolutely. We just actually finished already in September. We finished one full entire day of training internally, as well as an additional half day on all of the forms and documentation. And then they'll all be signed up for PD through the state accounting, through local support systems.
And are the students trained on bullying, what not to do?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have character building infused into all of our content areas. And then when you see in upcoming agendas, you hear about the Week of Respect, as well as Red Ribbon Week and other weeks, whereby we really promote practices that are HIV preventative.
And if the kid is found to be bullying more than almost a year, what happens to the student then? If a student has been bullying another student for almost a year, what happens to that student?
That would really, I mean, everything would be circumstantial. So to give a generic answer to that, I
A
think
generic answer.
a generic answer wouldn't be appropriate, because we would certainly hope that, bullying for a year is not something that's going on, that there's been enough action taken to make sure that that's not.
Elaine, if you're concerned that there's somebody you know that has been experiencing bullying for, quote, over a year, I would suggest that parent contact either Mrs. DeMarco or Dr. Carino specifically to answer that in front of a group of about 100 people. Mrs. DeMarco cannot answer that.
No, that's all right. I'm not saying on names, but I'm just saying as instances that
Right.
goes on. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think there's another very important component with respect to anti-bullying, which wasn't mentioned, and of course, Mrs. DeMarco was extremely thorough, very detailed in all of her explanations. But one additional piece, a significant amount of time and attention and professional development goes into prevention, and that certainly is a focus of Ms. Muley. Indeed, this evening she'll be making a presentation in executive session to the board. Of course, we can't talk to you about the nature and scope of that presentation, but prevention is really a significant focal point on all of the efforts in every building, through every principal, through the guidance department, through each and every teacher, and of course, the anti-bullying specialists.
Communications, Mr. DePisa. None. Finance Committee, Mr. Sweck.
Okay, well, the motions can be split between 1 to 3, 4 to 5. Any board member who takes exception to any of the following business actions under this category of the Finance Committee may so indicate now in a separate motion for each of the accepted items to be indicated. I make a motion that the board adopt items 1 through 3.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato. 4. Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri. 4. Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck.
4.
Mr. Vuno.
4.
Okay, now I make motion that the board adopt items 4 to 5.
Second.
I think they have to be separate.
They're going to accept,
Four has to be separate.
Okay, we'll make them separate.
Second.
Okay, number 4, Mr. David, roll call.
Mr. Abiscato. 4. Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri. 4. Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis. Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4. Okay, item 5. Ms. Schweck, roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri. Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
Abstain. Education Curriculum Committee.
Any board member who takes exception to any of the following listed actions under the category of Education and Curriculum Committee may so indicate now in a separate motion for each of the accepted actions will be entertained.
Roll call.
Hearing none, I make a motion that we accept 1 to 6.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. Mr. Vuno.
4. Okay, rules and regulations. Any board member who takes exception to any of the following listed actions under the category of Rules and Regulations Committee may so indicate now, and a separate motion for each of the accepted actions will be entertained. Hearing none, I make a motion that items 1 through 5 be accepted.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4. We're going to be doing the personnel agenda. Mr. Jarvis?
Any board member who takes exception to any of the following listed actions under the category of student activities and recognition committee may so indicate now in a separate motion for each of the accepted actions to be entertained.
Second.
Hearing none, I think for 1 and 2.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4. Okay, Mr. Grillo, personnel.
Okay. We're gonna do 3 through 26. This is for 3 through 26. Any board member who takes exception to any of the following listed actions under the category of personnel may so indicate now in a separate motion for each of the accepted actions will be entertained. And like I said, this is 3 through 26.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4.
Okay, now we're gonna do number 1.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
Proudly abstain.
Okay, now I'm gonna read number 2. Be it resolved at the recommendation of James A. Carino, interim superintendent of schools, that the Lyndhurst Board of Education appoint Luann Boza for the position of math supervisor, effective immediately at a salary subject to negotiations.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato. 4. Ms. Alberti.
4.
Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4. Before we move on, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Laura Vuno, who is here. And our new Mansell supervisor is also here, Luann Boza.
There's the third item, there's going to be a third item under new business. There's a motion over there that is an agreement between the Lyndhurst Board of Education and the Association of Lyndhurst Supervisors. There's a memorandum that will be, that is on file in my office. So that will be number 3 under new business. That memorandum of agreement is for the, 15-16 school year.
Okay. Under new business, I make a motion that we accept items 1, 2, 3.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abiscato.
4.
Ms. Alberti. 4. Ms. Alciuri.
4.
Mr. Grillo.
4.
Ms. Jarvis.
4.
Mr. Schweck. 4. Mr. Vuno.
4. Public comment on 9 non-agenda items. Elaine?
Since you just added number 3 to page 11 of the new business, what percent raise did you give the supervisor? No?
The memorandum is for 2.8%.
How many?
1 year, 15-16 school year.
My other question is, what is your cell phone policy with the students and teachers?
So right now, the cell phone policy is that students have their phones turned off and not in use during school hours. However, we also understand that in many cases, the use of phones can be a helpful learning device in the classrooms. There are some apps that teachers can use that actually allow students to use their phones almost as responses to something like hoop.com, etc. So we have established procedures and protocols which do invite teachers at appropriate times to allow students to use their phones if they have them available for the sake of learning and structured activities.
So during the day, are students and teachers allowed to use it for personal things while you're in class?
During teaching time?
Yes.
I would say the policy is not to do that. We do, of course, though, I think for humane purposes, if someone is experiencing difficulty or anticipating a call or something like that, there are certainly times when teachers have sought administrative approval to have their phones available to them so they can be apprised of situations that are very personal and very important and significant. We've certainly made exceptions in those situations.
All right, thank you.
Sal Moretti?
Yes, I'm a Paramus resident, and incidentally, I did substitute teach at Lyndhurst School, as well as a couple of dozen other schools in New Jersey. I have just put together I guess it's my 7th volume, which I've copyrighted in Washington, the Copyright Office. This one is with regard to cinema history as social psychology. And I notice you discussed this evening the issue of values. I have a degree in psychology from George Washington University, which is the Gag Hoover University. And I was interested in the development educationally of psychological testing, specifically with regard to pinpointing specific psychological needs of students and enraying values. So I believe the list of about 200 movies, which I have set forth in the cinema list, and which I've set forth also in pictorial form or graphic form, would be a good addition to your curriculum. I've suggested it to others. I have a 22-page transmittal, which I'd like to present to you, and you can peruse it upon your need. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who would like it?
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
when Mrs. DeMarco and I have an opportunity to review the material that you presented, along with the supervisor of social studies, we'll follow up with you in short order.
Good, thank you.
At this time, the board is going to be going into executive session. Your personnel agenda is already approved. The executive session will be discussing other items that will not be brought back here for a vote. So, for all intent and purposes, the meeting, unless you have a need to stick around for several hours, which I don't think you do, it's finished. So, so I need a motion to adjourn the executive session.